Welcome to another edition of Southern Home Talk. I'm Chuck Phillip with South Alabama Home Inspections. This is Hurricane Ready After the Storm, episode 45, part 5. Well, I hope everybody made it through the storm okay. And you probably looked out your front or back door and maybe seen this here. This is a photograph of my parents' backyard after Hurricane Frederick in 1979. So if you've got a wooded lot, there's a chance you may see some of this with trees laid over. And look back here in the back, these pine trees are cut in half about halfway up. So it took a long time to clear all this stuff up. I think it took right about a year just to get my parents' yard straightened out, and it took several years to get the area in general cleared up. So you're going to have to really be patient during this process. And you also have to be really careful in your cleanup attempts too, because many people get hurt just doing this. So if you're not familiar with chainsaws and stuff like that, you need to really become familiar with them before you start using these types of tools. So just be careful. And one thing I forgot to mention in some of my other presentations is before the storm hits, you really should go out and take a lot of photographs of your yard and your house. That way you'll have some comparable photographs in case you have to claim some sort of insurance damage as a claim. One thing you really gonna have to be careful of is down power lines in your neighborhood. And the most dangerous thing about these is that often they're concealed under debris, and you may not even realize that you're right on top of one. And there's tremendous amount of voltage that run through these. I mean, the basic powers are anywhere from 7,200 volts to 12,000 volts. And you wouldn't even really have to touch the wire to get electrocuted. It would actually energize the ground. And not only that, it's also possible that someone down the street may have a generator that doesn't have the proper transfer switch, and it could be backfeeding these wires as well. So this is, a lot of people get killed, out after the storm, walking around checking damage and stuff, and they get electrocuted. They survive the entire storm only to die the next day from electrocution. One of the first things you want to do after the storm is evaluate your structure for damage and then seal any critical areas that may be subject to water intrusion, like your siding and your roof, because follow-up feeder bands could be coming in behind this. And not only that, but afternoon thunderstorms can come in with heavy rainfall. And it really doesn't take a whole lot of moisture to breach these wall cavities and roof structures, and really can even add to what's already probably a bad situation already. If you have any roof damage, hopefully you have some tarps on hand. I've discussed that in some of the previous episodes of how important it is to keep at least 2 or 3 tarps on hand. So I would get up there and put these over the damaged areas. And a good way to secure those, especially if you have wood fascia running around the front, is to take a staple gun and staple it to that fascia. Now another way to be to put weighted bags up here, but you really want to make every effort you can to keep these from blowing off the roof. And there's a very good possibility you could have some debris covering up your utilities, like your water meter and your electrical panels on the side of the house. You want to make sure those get cleared off so you can access that. But on another note too, you can see how this water meter is being overgrown by the grass out there on the lawn. And don't ever let that happen, because it can get to the point where you won't be able to find this. And you also want to keep these cleared out too, because most of the time these are filled up with mud and water. And so if you ever had an emergency cutoff, you're going to be really in an anxiety attack trying to find your meter, trying to get it dug out to get the water cut off. And don't ever let the vegetation grow up like this either in front of your electrical panels. This all needs to be clear, for emergency purposes, because there's going to be times that you're going to have to get in here and cut the power off. Not only that, if you ever have a fire, the fire department's going to want to come and cut the power off to the house too. So there's just all kinds of reasons, why this shouldn't be blocked. Another real danger is going to be displaced wildlife. I mean, they've been through hell over the last 24 hours, And most of the time their habitat gets flooded, and so they're on the move looking for higher ground. And most of the time that higher ground is going to be your yard. And so if you're out in your yard, you really should be out there in boots, because a lot of people get bit by snakes walking around because there's a lot of vegetation laying out there and they conceal pretty well in that. And so if you step on one of them, they're going to bite you. But also too, not all snakes are poisonous, and even the poisonous ones really don't want to bite you. So I've got pretty good experience in dealing with these snakes. Even with this water moccasin, which you're looking at here in the right picture, they actually do have a pretty bad reputation. But I've had many encounters with these types of snakes, and I know for a fact that they're not going to bite unless you aggravate them, try to kill them, try to catch them, or step on them. I mean, maybe if you stomp real close in front of them, they may bite you, but pretty much if you leave them alone, they leave you alone. And there's other videos, despite what you've been told over the years about being chased by water moccasins and stuff like that. I tell you straight up, it's not true. But also don't kill the non-poisonous snakes. They really are good for our environment. We need to keep them out there. Okay, this is what I have for my protection, and I wear these in the yard too sometimes, and these are snake boots. I also wear these out in the swamp, and I've had many encounters with water moccasins. And I can tell you from experience that generally, if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. I've never had a water moccasin chase me, ever. And if you go to YouTube and type in chased by a nest of water moccasins, I think you'd be surprised at what you'll see. But not only that, even if you are bit by a water moccasin or any poisonous snake, usually, well, I won't say usually, but probably 40 to 50% of the time, they're not going to put any venom in you, or very little, because they need that venom for their next meal. And it takes them around 3 weeks to replenish that venom. So it's kind of precious to them. They really don't want to use it on you. They'd much rather you just leave them alone. And most of the people that get bit by snakes are people that's either stepped on them or tried to kill them or catch them, or they thought they were dead and tried to pick it up. And that's really something that can get you right there, because there's no other animal out there that can play dead better than a snake, and you will really think it's dead and you'll pick it up and you'll get bit. So just be careful with them. And not only that, but they are beneficial to us in some ways. And you certainly don't want to, if you can help it, try not to kill any non-poisonous snakes, because they really are beneficial to our environment. Really the thing to do is to take the time just to become familiar with the types of snakes we have here and their behavior. I mean, I think it's probably the right thing to do to kill a poisonous snake if it's around the house. Maybe you do want to go ahead and kill that and get that one out of the way. But, try not to kill any of the non-poisonous ones. They are good to have around. Now, in this right photograph, you'll see some mosquito products. These are the ones I actually use. This Colton's is a natural product. It's made of cedar oil and garlic. And so it's basically just a concentrated repellent that has a long-term effect in keeping them away. But you also should probably have 6 or more cans of off, because it don't take too much to go through these, and we're going to have a ton of mosquitoes after this storm, and it's just good to have. Another effective product that's kind of pricey is this Cutter Backyard repellent. It works pretty good, but definitely going to want to keep the mosquitoes away. I don't know of any place down here that doesn't have a problem with them. As a home inspector, I will tell you that the #1 issue with every house down here in South Alabama is moisture. It has some sort of moisture relation. And it's a latent problem that most people don't think they have. And I've even got some videos about that. I even call it the problem no one believes they've got. And so now that this storm's passed, if you have garages that have gaps in them like this, and if you have moisture in your garage, you want to get that dried up as soon as possible, because the garage is a very good place for that moisture to turn to humidity and get inside your house. And it only takes about 24 to 48 hours for mold to start forming. And it's a big problem. So if you don't have a dehumidifier, I think that every house should have at least one, probably two. And really all garages should be climate controlled anyway. I'm not going to get into a long discussion about this, but just know that if you have any damp or wet areas inside your house or garage, you want to get them dried up as soon as possible. The most miserable time you'll ever experience in your life are the days after a hurricane. And that's when you're going to have over 90-degree temperatures with 100% humidity, which is going to equal around 115 degrees of the heat index. And so you're really going to have to take extra measures to stay cool. And so if you don't have an indoor air conditioning system, maybe backed up by a power generator, I don't recommend you doing any kind of strenuous work, because you can really have a heat stroke, and it really doesn't matter how young or old you are for that to happen. And the emergency rooms, they may not be up to full speed to deal with that kind of emergency. So you're really going to have to take care of your health at this point, and you also have to stay pretty hydrated too. I talked about in some of the previous slides about buying lots of bottled water. Well, this is the reason. Normally before all this would happen, you may drink 2 to 3 bottles of bottled water a day, but now in these conditions, you may be up to 15 to 25 bottles of water a day. And that's the reason why you have to have so much of it on hand. And also too, another little tip is it's a good idea to maybe take some towels, hand towels, and soak them in ice water. And so if you are getting overheated, you need to place them on your head and around your neck and try to stay cool that way. But really, this is a life and death situation as far as heat stroke. I know the general to-do list for hurricane preparedness includes a first aid kit, but I recommend that you have a trauma level first aid kit with big gauzes and bandages, because these are bad injuries are really common after storms. And you might not need it so much for you or your family. It's a possibility that your neighbor may get a serious injury from cutting on a tree with a chainsaw and it slipped and it cuts him to the bone. Really you need to have wartime first aid equipment, to deal with these types of injuries, because this can be life and death as well. You may not have very many ambulance services running, if any at all. And there again, the emergency room might not be up to speed. So this is the reason why it's really important to have a trauma level first aid kit on hand and have lots of supplies for it. It's not uncommon to have a lot of out-of-state utility companies running around the neighborhood trying to restore power. But if the power line between your house and the road is down, you need to contact your local utility and let them know that. This is called the service drop. And even though it's not 7,200 volts or higher, it is 240 volts, and that's plenty to kill you. So you got to be really careful walking around your own property. If this was your first hurricane and you didn't have storm shutters, you probably went and bought plywood to put over your windows, which is a good thing to do. But when you take them down, don't store them against the outside of the house like in this right photograph. You can look down the wall and see all this fungus and mildew. And what happens is this holds moisture back to the brick. And brick is a porous substance like a sponge. And it'll hold this moisture there for a long period of time. And it can even wick it back into the wall cavity and create mold problems inside the house. I've got some videos about this and also videos on how to protect your wall and protect it from fungus and such issues like that. So after the storm's over with, you contact a local company, maybe come out and put certified storm panels on your house. Now, when you do remove your storm panels, now would be a good time, especially if you had a hard time putting them up before the storm got here. It can take a long time to put up storm panels in general. And if you don't know where all the panels go, it can take even longer. So if you manage to get all your panels up, now would be a good time to write on these panels what room these protect, and write it on every panel. and keep them together, especially if you have like metal panels. You keep them in the garage or under the house, and do it to every one. So the next storm that comes, which there's going to be another one coming, it won't take near as long to put these panels back up because they're all marked as to where they need to go. But these bolts along the bottom edge, now what I do is I leave the bolts in there. That way I know where they are. I don't have to go digging through drawers to find them. But I also use anti-seize, which comes in a little can, and I paint these bolt heads with that, and that anti-seize will keep them from seizing up. And so I can get the wing nut back off of it pretty easy and also put it back on. Now, if you have the fabric panels, make sure you put them back in the bags where they came out of, and also store them in a place where they can be found. Now, I believe a lot of these fabric panels are standardized and they're the same size, but if you had that problem installing these, you also want to mark them as to what windows they cover. If you have a natural gas generator or maybe propane, like the one in the left photograph, maybe you have a Generac, this is a Briggs, but if this thing runs 24 hours, you want to shut it down and check the oil level in it, because sometimes you can have some loose seals and it can run low on oil, and the worst thing that can happen to you is this thing just simply burn up and now you're without power for days at a time. So it's just better to be without power for 10 minutes while you do that than to be completely without it. And also keep plenty of oil on hand. You may have to do 2 or 3 oil changes, and you're probably wondering why that is. Well, you got to realize, when our cars, we change the oil in it about every 2 to 3 months, but we're not running it 24 hours a day. So when you run these 24 hours a day, it's putting a lot of mileage on these, and you may have to change it several times, especially if you want to take care of your unit. Now, if you have a portable generator, you really want to be careful about gasoline. This is something that all of us kind of take for granted, but it's dangerous. I mean, it's explosive and it's very flammable. And so don't store this in closets or in garages. You really want to store this away from the house as far as possible, for safety. No matter how bad you want to clean up your yard, take your time doing it. It took my parents right about a year to clean up their yard after Hurricane Frederick. Now, granted, we had a lot of trees down, but you really don't want to overexert yourself trying to get it cleaned up. I mean, it would be a bad thing for you to die from heat exhaustion, especially after you survive the storm itself. So don't get any big rush doing this. Just take your time and do a little bit here and there and make you a pile out the front of the road, and eventually they'll come by and pick it up. But try not to cover up your water meter, because if that's the only way you have of cutting water off to the house, it's a possibility you may have a plumbing emergency and you won't be able to cut the water off. So just be mindful of that. But also just be safe. Don't get yourself hurt with a chainsaw cutting this stuff up. And if you have to, just hire someone to come do it, because that might be the safer option. Thanks for taking the time to watch this episode. We have several videos on hurricane preparedness and recommend you take the time to watch them and become hurricane ready. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Southern Home Talk. We are committed to the issues that affect our houses here in the Deep South. Knowledge is savings, and it may save your life too.